Hello, Chegg FM, Yuda Gilad here, broadcasting from Chegg's music room in Rehovot, straight into your heads. And today in English, because we're hosting our COO, Chief Operating Officer, man who has been in leadership Chegg for 15 years, Nathan Schultz. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
So we had this chance to participate in team building activities a couple of months ago. And we were on the same team.
Yeah.
And so I noticed two things about you.
Okay.
We were on like crazy. It was crazy. It was nice.
Little amazing race around Tel Aviv.
Amazing race. Tel Aviv, no, some place.
Yeah.
It didn't look like Tel Aviv. So immediately you were a team player, but you were at the background and you were letting everyone lead. Become a leader. Amazing. They grew around you. But there were moments when there was some challenge that froze us. Something unexpected, crazy. And there, you jumped right in without a second's delay. You popped that bug into your mouth and you unfroze us, right? And then you stepped back to the background. I understand the idea. Amazing leadership. But the muscle memory with which you did it tells me, okay, he's a master of a craft. He's a kung fu.
Black belt in leadership.
That was hugely inspirational for me, and thank you. So we have a great leadership. Before I tell you what's going on here, and you tell us about yourself, tell us, what is this thing called Chief Operating Officer?
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, I've been in Chegg for a long time, had many leadership roles, sometimes within a division and sometimes as a part of a larger division. But what a company needs as it scales is someone who's looking across all the pieces, and not in a strategic fashion all the time, and not in a way that's up and out. The way our phenomenal and amazing CEO is, who's working with investors, who's working on new partnerships, whose really job is to be the face of the company, but someone's got to make sure the company runs and runs in a way that is in line with whatever our financial model may be, whatever our KRs for the year may be. Someone's got to do that. And that's the chief operating officer. They've got to stay in the moment, in the present, around how are we going to achieve our goals for the next 12 months, the next 24 months, the next 36 months, and kind of plot out that roadmap, right? And that path for us to get to that in a way that's consistent, and having that consistency and unfortunately sometimes making the tough trade-offs, right? And doing that in a consistent manner so it's applied to all groups around the company in an equal and fair way, right? I think we've all been in situations where we sometimes don't understand how those decisions are made. Why did this group get to do that and this group didn't get to do that? We try to make sure that's done in the most consistent manner. And in order for that to be done in a scalable way, which is what we're all trying to do, you got to have someone in that role. And so for years, I played the role in that similar role, but for the learning services organization of Chegg, as we scaled and grew up as a company, we needed it at the corporate level.
So making everything work behind the scenes, basically.
Yeah.
And also what I hear is that the ability to project growth or whatever depends on whether you allow it to happen or whether it's possible. You can
some of those things are just asking the right questions and making sure, again, that every team's bringing their A game across the board, and we're applying our methodology consistently. That's not done haphazardly. That's done systematically. And this role, along with my counterparts in finance and in analytics and all the fields, we have to apply that lens strategically so we can make sure we're not just going to grow this year, we're going to grow next year and the year after. And again, that stuff doesn't, we do say brilliant by accident at Chegg sometimes, and there are many cases where we are brilliant by accident, but there's also many cases where we're brilliant because we were brilliant operators, we're brilliant strategists, we're brilliant tacticians, we're brilliant engineers, right? We want to continue to be that.
Amazing. Truly, now I get it. It's it organized the workplace, the band of professionals.
Yeah.
On one hand, on the other hand, being so close to the business.
That's exactly it.
Okay, thank you for that.
It's a fun job. Grew up in Boston, of a wonderful town to be from. Still a Red Sox fan, still a Celtics fan. All my Celtics fans out there, they're an amazing team. Grew up in a Jewish family, pretty religious by, I think, American standards. Went to temple on Shabbat and went to temple on all the holidays. What I would consider a pretty great childhood. Family was dedicated to education, so did the standard stuff that all standard, I think, kids in kind of rural New England do. Play lots of sports, but really got a love for education as I came through high school and through college, and actually it was in college that I really decided that I wanted it to be my profession. And I thought I was gonna be a lawyer. No offense to lawyers out there, love what you do, but it wasn't for me. And I actually did, went to law school for a quick period of time and decided that wasn't the path that I was gonna go on. And
What age was that?
I was coming out of college, about 21, and I actually returned home. And funny enough, I had a next door neighbor who I always admired. Didn't know what he did, but I always admired. So I went to him. I said, "Tom, what do you do?" And Tom said, "I work in educational publishing." And I said, all right, what's that?" And he goes, he's like, "Well, why don't you come by my office and I'll tell you all about it." And he actually worked for a very small company at the time called Jones and Bartlett Publishing. Weeks later, I got a job there, and kind of like it set the path for me, it charted the path for me, which I just fell in love with. Being part of education and being part of creating curriculum and being able to impact students' lives was just a phenomenal thing. And so at that point, I decided to really dedicate myself to that craft and to being part of the education industry.
The third season of this show, Aviel came to me. He said, "I'm looking for something."
Okay.
And we fleshed out an idea that we want to talk about career as a vessel to your significance in life.
Right. Yeah. Your legacy.
It's what you live every minute.
Yeah.
It becomes a grind.
Yeah.
But anything super exciting becomes a grind.
Work is called work for a reason.
Yeah.
Right.
But the story you tell yourself of what you're doing or where you're going is very important. And we feel it's misrepresented or underrepresented.
Yeah.
So we want to know what to tell our kids when we teach them about how to adopt growth mindset.
Sure. I have a 21-year-old son. I also think you met my 7-year-old son. So I've got some polar opposites going on at my house. My 21-year-old son's in college. He's a sophomore at University of Las Vegas, Nevada. So he gets to spend his time in Las Vegas, which is nice, but he's there for school. And he's doing a good job at it. It was just this last holiday season, December, he was home for break, and you can see the weight of the world on these young kids, right? And they want to feel like they have everything figured out. And they want to feel like they know how they're going to make their money. They know who their significant other is going to be. They know how many kids they're going to have, and so on and so on. And I just sat him down and said, "Tyler, you're 21. You don't get to pick the end of your game right now. You're just at the start of the board. Like you just got handed a map for your life in some sense, and you're at college. You can kind of plot your own path at this point. You get to really unfold the next chapters. Once that academic chapter is over, like you're starting something that's so amazing. Do not think you have to have the answers." I don't fully understand yet. I think a lot about it because I have the situation, and I think every parent does with their kids these days at some level. We want to try to make it right for them, but we also need to make sure we let them go, give them the space to test and fail and test and fail and test and succeed eventually. And I try to tell my kids my story, but they're my kids, so they listen to the story halfway, right? I left college with a history and English degree in the United States at a period of time where getting a job wasn't a sure thing. I was lucky enough to get a job, but it was a job that didn't really require the use of my history and English degree. Within 3 years, I had outgrown any real applicable academic training I had received in college in the workplace. And I realized, fuck, I don't understand what a profit and loss statement is. I don't understand how to do budgeting. I don't understand some basic business math because in college, I didn't really take that stuff. So I had to go back to school and get a master's in finance from a wonderful institution. And it wasn't until then that I said, now I want to start my own company. And then it wasn't until then I said, I can go run my own company. And thankfully I was able to do that successfully for a number of years and be able to sell it and then able to take another big leap in my life. But along that path, never did I think I got the answer. It was really living to that moment of saying, am I am I happy with what I'm doing right now? And people will come to me sometimes and say like, I'm upset with my job. And I say, well, are you upset with your job every day? Or is it some days? If you look at the last 30 days and you can say 51% of the time I enjoyed my job, then stay in your job. If you say, well, no, it's 49% and 51% of the time I was unhappy, then it's time to make a move, right? It's time to change your career because you've decided it's not for you. And it's not giving up on something that you decided it's not for you. We've got to get to a point where we got to allow our kids to grow, but we also got to realize that, the path they're going to take is not the path that we took. And the path that we took is not a path that anyone laid out for us.
No answers, only questions there.
And for me, it comes back to about being present.
You're saying, I try to teach my kid that they're not at the end, only at the beginning, but beginnings are the most difficult.
You have the most amount of fear.
Okay, fear then.
If you do anything outdoorsy, athletic, the first step is always the step with the greatest amount of fear.
Okay.
It's like when you ski down a big steep slope, when you go off the top, it looks crazy. You get to the bottom, you look up and you go, that wasn't that bad.
You said that at some point during college, so you already were thinking about career. How did it came about, this understanding? And what paths the work needs to be done to get there?
You never want to be in an audience and not be in the know, right? You ever have a conversation with your friends, they're talking about a topic and you're completely ignorant about that topic. There's this, you want to, recede back from the table and hopefully not be asked for your opinion because you're not going to be able to give one. You became very clear to me within really the first few years of working after college that what I learned in college, it made me curious, made me analytical, it made me a great writer, made me a great speaker. It didn't prepare me for the types of conversations and the type of mental exercises I was going to have to do in the workplace. I didn't have to think about things like budgeting. I didn't have to think about things like how to create models around cost structures and revenue returns and the things that we do today as natural. As a 24-year-old, I was completely ignorant, but if I don't know how to do this, I'll never have that seat at that table. Everything comes down to some formula of ambition, curiosity, ability to get through fear. I mean, there's a great expression that says everything that we've ever desired is on the other side of fear. It's a concept that's always stuck with me, right? So if I can just take that first step, and that first step for me was, I got to go learn Excel. Like, this is, remember, I'm old. Back then, Excel was novel, right? So, I got to go learn this. I didn't have a class for it. Then it became, I'm getting data, I'm being able to transform in Excel, but half the time I have to wait for data. I got to go learn SQL. If I can get closer to SQL, then I can get the data myself and I can start to manipulate it in different ways and I can start to create different answers. And I think the base of my education gave me the curiosity to ask the questions, but it didn't give me the tools to answer the questions. And I think that annoyed me. It pissed me off at some level. It made me say like, nah, I should be able to be self-sufficient. I should be able to do this myself. I should be able to get this. And I should be able to, as a result of being able to do all this stuff, I should be able to be rewarded within the organization. And that meant more responsibility. It's a flywheel. If you take that step, it will propel you this way. If you take another step, it will propel you even more, And you keep getting propelled by your own curiosity at some level. And that curiosity creates competency, and that competency creates, in many cases, the ability to rise up in an organization. Some of our modern employees, they're asking us to chart that path for them. I don't know if that's a realistic ask of employers or of your manager. Most managers today were trained by a bad manager because most companies inherently don't have great management training. We at Chegg, I think, have a phenomenal management training. So we do a great job in thinking about who our managers will be and what level are they at and what skills we have to give them. But prior to coming to Chegg, if you worked for a large company, I worked for some very large companies, my managers never had management training. My first management style was an emulation of their bad management style. You can't let other people choose your path for you. You have to own your path.
What if you won't own your path? What will happen to you? I mean,
honestly, I think you will not be satisfied in your professional pursuits. Mm-hmm. I'm not getting the promotions I want. I'm not getting the pay I want. I'm not getting the salary I want. I must not be good enough. And like, that's a bad place to be. But if you take on the responsibility, and I think every employee has a responsibility to own their own career path at some level, and yes, your employer does too. And if you're at a company where your employer does not help you, if your employer acts as an anchor and not a propeller, get the fuck out of that company. If you're at a company where your employer acts as a propeller for you, stay at that company. And that's another thing that young people need to hear. Staying at a company is not a bad thing. I've been at Chegg for 15 years. I never thought in my life I was going to stay at a company for 15 years. I owned a company for only 4 years and sold it. And that was my baby. I started that thing. I birthed it. I created an amazing revenue stream. I got a phenomenal exit for it. That took 4 years. So when I joined Chegg, did I think I said spend 15 years there? Hell no. But I did because it acted as a propeller for my career. Every time I raised my hand and said, I'd like another opportunity, they said, well, you're good for the culture. Your work ethic's great. You're smart. Sure, we'll give you the opportunity. If the company's not invested in you, then you're not invested in the company. But if the company is invested in you, stay at the company.
One thing you said, and I think it's the basis of how you explain things, what propelled you. I had an ambition. So you need to have an ambition. Yeah. But it's part of being someone. It seems like ambition and career may be disengaged if you own your career path.
Yeah.
This is what you do, man. This is what you create.
Yeah. Yeah.
Own it. Doing the first step, right? This encourages me. How do you cope with the fear?
Just take a step. There are many days I look at my to-do list and say, how the hell am I going to do this? And I just remind myself one step at a time. Take that first task first. Get that second task when you're done with the first task. Get that third task when you're done with the second task. If you take it from the mindset of, let me try to take these 3 tasks on at the same time, we all know what's going to happen. You're going to fail at all 3 tasks.
How do you cope with the failure? I mean, what's the best way to cope with failure?
First off, we shouldn't ever say cope with failure. We should celebrate failure. If I had 2 people interviewing for a job and I had one person had failed a number of times, let's assume they're both competent enough. One person had never failed and one person had failed a number of times. I'd hire the person that failed 1,000 times over. That means that person took a risk.
Okay, I see.
Right? If we don't take risks, we'll never fail. At some level, waking up every day and putting on our face to go in the world is taking a risk. There are a number of failures I've made in my professional career. There's a number I'll still make in the future. But every single time I've made a failure or I think back to a failure, and it won't happen the next day after you realize that it's not going to work. Maybe it's a year later. Maybe it's 2 years later. Maybe it's the plane ride next month you're going to be on and you think back to that problem that didn't quite work. You're going to learn something from that. You're going to put it into your arsenal. You're going to put it into your toolbox for future things. And you're going to say, yeah. Next time I go into an international market and I try to expand, I'm really going to think through the market requirements, the actual technical requirements of being in that market versus just being so ambitious and saying, let's go get some customers. I think experience balances ambition. I'm not saying ambition of like, I want drive. I'm saying the ambition sometimes that we get that makes us make assumptions or not ask questions of failure balances that. So you ask that question so you can balance that ambition with good strategy.
And you might fail, but the experiences you will gain
is worth 1,000 courses you could ever take.
I understand if you celebrate a failure, why you would fear it less.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can combat the fear this way.
Okay. It still hurts.
But sometimes people just fail at that level. And there'll be no next time.
Yeah. It's about how you pick yourself up again, right? Do that thing that you got to do to make yourself get over that moment, whether that be go take a hike, go take a run, I don't know, go drink a couple beers, whatever it may be, right? Well, it's different for everybody. Dwelling on that, what could have, should have been, that's paralysis.
Another thing you kind of figured in what you said from different angles, the business side of it. You said, when I went into the world, I understood that for a business, I was incompetent. But assuming that business is something that you found yourself in and wanted to get better at. And a myth that we're trying to bust, the cultures are different. In the United States, it's obvious. But in Israel, a socialist background country, people think my career is my mastery, kind of like Japan. It's not a business. I'm not a business. I'm not an entrepreneur, right?
Okay.
Honing my craft is the most important thing that I can do for my career. And you say, wait, no. You're studying that design or engineering job, not to be engineer all your life, but to be some part of some business operation, to own parts of business or become your business owner.
Right.
How does it change you? I mean, because you need skills, you need thinking, different thinking.
So the question you asked is one I struggle with a little bit in this sense that for me, I've always wanted to dabble enough in everyone's work or everyone's function so I could have an equal seat at the table, right? I think it's what, probably what at some level makes me competent enough to be the COO of Chegg, right? I absolutely think you've got to master a craft, right? For me, I think the thing that I love the most about my job is the financial side of things. I find balance in it. I find harmony in it. I find it beautiful, right? As an engineer may find, designing an architecture beautiful. I find finance beautiful. It's calming. That said, if all I was is just a finance person, I wouldn't have the understanding of what an engineer needs, what a designer needs. I don't think those two things of honing your craft and being compassionate and understanding every function within an organization that makes an organization work really well are at opposites. I think they're actually very much in harmony, because if you want to be someone who the company looks at, the employees look up to, it's not only just because you're an amazing architect and you're just a phenomenal at AI. It really comes down to, at some level, after you get past that first layer, which is the mastery of your own craft, is how do you fit into an organization, and are you an X factor in that organization? And X factors in these organizations are people who understand enough of the other functions, so when they are designing that next product, they're designing it with the appreciation for how is this going to go to market? What is the positioning we need to have on it? How is marketing going to be involved? How is, in our case, content going to be involved at Chegg? How is design going to be involved? And you're building it from a holistic standpoint versus, just a mastery of a single craft is a very myopic standpoint. I always encourage, particularly people who want to go to management within a function, whether you're an engineering manager, data science manager, for you to be a great engineering manager, it's not okay to just be a great engineer. You have to be a great people person. You have to be a great listener. You have to think about organization and behavior and organizational development and career pathing, understand a bunch of things around the edges beyond your engineering thing. So I think the best people are people who aren't just curious in their own craft. Fine, go master it. I'm not saying don't do that. That is a great thing to do. I loved finance. I got a master's in finance because I loved finance. What you'll really start to love as you kind of grow more in your business career, and that business career isn't just for a business person, it's for everybody, is when you start to appreciate all aspects of an organization and what makes an organization run, because it's not just one part of an organization that will make an organization run.
To see a bigger picture, to influence more, this is the only way to look at things.
Absolutely.
I don't know what's going on anywhere else. I don't care. But here at Chegg, mentoring it's a very significant thing, and it works, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And you said, well, there was a time there were bad managers.
There are still bad managers today.
Okay, say some kid, he wants to develop a career, first job. The most important things, and this is what I hear from people I interview, the most important thing that happened to them, my great first manager took me by the hand and did something.
Yeah.
When I think about this relationship, Jedi master and Jedi student, kind of, it's the relationship of trust, yes, but work, tons of work. You need to grow, becoming leaders. Is it important? Is it for everyone? What does it mean on a personal level?
No, it's not. And leadership is not for everyone. And I think people conflate management with salary increases and responsibility increases. I think you got to realize being a manager actually is a ton of responsibility. I mean, you're taking someone else's career, someone else's ambitions, someone else's personality, someone else's family problems, someone else's marital problems into your own world. That's the responsibility of a manager. Being a manager isn't something you clock out of at 5 o'clock at night. Being a manager is actually a 365-day responsibility. I have an employee, that employee's sick, that employee has a child, that employee's child's in the hospital. It's Saturday. You have I think a moral and ethical responsibility as a manager to be empathetic to that person's situation, to clear the path of their work, to make sure that their benefits are all tied and ready to go. I mean, that's your responsibility as a manager. So if you're not someone who wants to have that level of responsibility, and truly be thoughtful about someone's life, don't be a manager. That's what falls into the category of bad managers. People who think I'm going to be a manager because it's for financial gain versus I think being a great manager is not for financial gain. It's for emotional gain. I take amazing pride in the fact that there's been a number of employees at Chegg that have been with me for 10, 12, 13 years, and I've watched their careers and helped them, because it's their doing, not my doing, obtain the skills and the career status that they want. As a manager, we're nothing, we're Sherpas, right? We know our path, not going to be their path. So we know the path up the mountain. Now it's going to be a little bit different for everyone. And we're going to be there to carry the water and the food and the sleeping bags and all that stuff with you because we've already been on that path. So we know a little bit more. It's not for everyone. It's a grind. It's not something, again, it's not something that you clock out from. But the role of a great manager is super important. I see cases, not at Chegg, because we wouldn't allow it because we think deeply about this, but I've seen cases at other companies where, the first-time manager suddenly has three employees. I mean, do you give someone 3 cars the second they get their driver's license? No. You give them the family beater. You let them practice a little bit. They crash into some stuff. They learn to be better drivers. The most tender moment in management is that first-time manager. It's a classic junk in, junk out problem. If you allow for managers to come into management without proper training, it's like bringing junk into the database. You're just going to get junk out. It's going to be non-normalized, ugly data. We don't like that.
Yeah, besides the huge amount of effort and thought that goes into hiring, there's also this system that needs to be built to grow managers, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just going down.
Yes. Otherwise, bad behavior builds bad behavior, right? For sure, 100%.
And what would be some qualities of a good manager for someone who starts a career and they got a job?
Right.
Okay. What are the red flags and what are the ways how to look at your manager? You're not only looking for encouragement, you're also looking for criticism.
It's a balance of the both. Great managers are people who are not afraid to have the hard conversations. Great managers are people who will talk to you. I like to refer to it as fair but firm, right? We have to be empathetic. I think that without empathy, there's no humanity, right? We got to be, we're emotional creatures at the heart of it. We've got to, in our workplace, where they talk a lot about taking off your armor, right? And so if you see people who live their day-to-day work life as someone who will fight with compassion, will fight with vulnerability, they're going to make phenomenal managers. If you see people who fight politically, who use things I refer to as pocket vetoes, those are people who will be terrible managers. Their interest is their own self-interest. Where people who will come to a debate and debate organically and empathetically and vulnerably, their best interest is the best interest of the company. That's why they're there debating in that style. But if I debate with you in a way that's my way or the highway, well, how would I treat an employee? How you act as an individual day to day, even outside of management, is how you're going to act as a manager. I think you have to watch people, how they act in situations of calmness as well as in situations of urgency, right? How do they deal with dissenting opinions in meetings? How do they deal with difficult peers? All those are telltale signs of who will be a great manager, right? And the best managers are people who literally manage without an organizational line. A lot of people will say, like, well, I can get this done if those people report to me. That is a huge red flag.
Interesting.
Right? That is when you say, no. Like, the best managers manage without the concept of an organizational alignment. This is the concept of an X factor, right? Like, they're so good at just being a person and about being an employee that people want to gravitate to them and they get shit done. I mean, there's something, you don't have to own every part of it.
Previously, we discussed that growing into your career is just to grow. And then, of course, you need to have all those skills, communication, compassion.
Right.
Just, you can't do something you don't believe in for many years. People will feel that.
Oh, yeah, for
at
sure.
the very least.
For sure.
Sometimes, most of the times, we like an autopilot. But much rarely we stop ourselves and ask and plan ahead. 5 years, 10 years. Imagine self-growth.
Yeah.
How do you approach those things? Do you plan ahead? Where you meet yourself?
The personal one's easier for me on this one, to be honest with you, because in the workplace, I feel because the workday is just so hectic in many cases, you kind of pinball through with the workplace sometimes, right? You're just kind of getting pushed around. I'm a big believer in setting up, professional goals and personal goals, right? I don't do this on a quarterly basis. I think about these as half year to annual kind of goals. Because I think it takes time to change behaviors. We're going to make mistakes along the way. We shouldn't shame ourselves for making a mistake along the way. I think that's a terrible behavior we have in humanity, where we shame ourselves for something that we, couldn't consistently do for 125 days straight. And I'm like, so what? You made a mistake. Get over it. Now, how do you pick yourself up? The pandemic gave me an interesting time in my life, because prior to that, I was on the road about 60% of my time. So, on the sad side, I didn't see my oldest son a lot. And as a result, I think, we probably don't have the strongest bond as I think I have it with my younger son, right? Because for the last, 3+ years, I've been with him day in and day out. What I didn't have for my family as a result of being able to be on the road 60% of the time was patience. And because I could get up every Sunday or every other Sunday, get on an airplane, fly to New York, fly to Tel Aviv, fly to India, fly to Berlin, fly to London, and work for a week. As a result, I didn't have to have patience with my family, because I knew they were kind of temporary. Pandemic hit, my wife was like, "You're not going to be leaving the house." And I'm like, holy shit. Like, what am I supposed to do? And we're Buddhist. I practice Buddhism today, I would say, thanks to her. And, I had to say to myself, like, I've got to actively practice patience. I have to learn patience. There's an app for everything. So, thank you Headspace, thank you Calm, thank you all those wonderful things. I actively said I'm going to put time and energy, like I did early in my career when I said I had to learn Excel or SQL or whatever it was I needed to learn. I said, I'm going to learn patience this time. People need to have that balance of those professional goals. They also need to have the balance of personal goals that ultimately bleed into your professional life. Like, as a result of having patience, the way I react to changes in the workplace are radically different than 3 years ago. I mean, I think when you first met me, I was just as much as a punk kid as I was when I came out of college at some level, right? Take the world by the balls. Let's go, go, go. It's, leave the carnage of people behind me. I'm going to keep going. Today, I don't have that perspective at all. And that was not because of something I ever did professionally. It was something I had to do personally, because I knew for my family to get through the last 3 to 4 years together, if I didn't do that, we wouldn't be a unit, right? And so it's just one of those moments where...
This time it hit you.
Yeah, it forced me, right? Yeah.
How would someone build part of their North Star?
Yeah.
Right? How often do I need to sit with myself, and what things do I need to check?
That's like that. That's that concept of stay humble, right?
Okay.
It's hard. It's hard, especially as you grow in your professional career, you become successful. People want to be around you as a result of it. It's frankly fucking hard to stay humble. I'll say early in my life, my professional life, as success was happening, I found that, as funny as enough as it is, international travel is a real humbling moment. So, American, myopic in our thinking of the world, everyone speaks English, everyone takes the US dollar, and you go to Argentina, you go to Brazil, you go to Colombia, you go to Vietnam, and you see a world that is 180 degrees different from your own perspective. Well, it didn't change me necessarily fundamentally as much as these last few years have in really, practicing Buddhism. I always came back with a humbleness that took away a little bit of that edge that was the bad edge, not the good edge. There's always a good edge to have in life, and
it made you better.
It made me better because I one, appreciated what I had more, and two, I didn't take it for granted. I wasn't that cocky, arrogant kind of ass about it. You kind of just, it checked you at the door. Mm-hmm. So I even said to my kids, I should say, about my oldest, I always say, like, one of the things I need you to do in life is start to travel by yourself. At one point, I had a bad time or a hard time in my life. It was right after a sale of a company. I had an existential crisis. I used to wake up every day and the 3 hours of sleep I got, and I knew exactly what I was going to do every day. And then one day it stopped. Like, I didn't know what to do with myself. I went to Vietnam. Got to go somewhere. I've always wanted to go. I backpacked from basically the Mekong River Delta all the way up to Ho Long Bay, which is known as the Dragon's Tail. Backpacking, car rides, whatever it is, airplane rides, but it took a month to basically walk the entire, through a bunch of cities. And that was the only way I think I broke that cycle in my body of like, my identity was stolen by the time when I sold my company, even though I didn't know I was giving it away, I was giving it away, but I had to leave and go be humble again and go, live a different lifestyle at some level. For that, it was one month. I'm not saying every time when you have a crisis, go away for a month, but go away for 3 days, go away for a weekend, go away for a week, go experience something that's not your normal, just checks you at the door.
So if you don't know where you're going, take up just any challenge that will show you again that you need to learn. You need to stay humble.
And continue to adapt. We're so used to walking into a room where everyone knows their name. They also know how you're going to react and how you're going to be, and you know how you're going to react and you're going to be. Now go walk into a place where no one fucking knows who you are and doesn't care that you have $1 million or $100. And it allows you to just be your authentic self because you don't have to put on that costume.
Authenticity. That's what you said about good managers. Okay, they're going there with passion, with openness. There's some authenticity and not some chess.
Yeah.
Becoming your authentic self.
Yeah.
This thing makes me think of this one idea that I think is misunderstood like everywhere in the world today. Retirement. Yeah. People think, I work. And then one day I'll retire and I'll be the gardener I want to be. And then 4 years after, he hates gardening because 40 years you've been doing something else.
Yeah.
How does retirement look for you? What define the concept?
There isn't. I don't even have a concept of retirement. Listen, there is the notion of one day you stop, your day-to-day 9 to 5 concept. Why? I mean, I'm not saying you have to go work for a corporation every single day of your life until the time that you are, what they say in the States, pushing weeds, basically. But you have to find hobbies. Hobbies turn into passions. Passions turns into a mastercraft. And is that retiring, or is that just taking your energies and focusing into something else? I don't think I'll ever stop being someone who wants to be part of an organization and mentoring great people and being with great leaders. I just think the concept of retirement is an odd one. It's not one that, I'll take my mother as an example. It's a phenomenal, powerful woman. She ran a massive nonprofit. She probably works more now as being quote unquote retired in things that she's equally passionate about as she was her medical career and her nonprofit career, but she's found new things to be passionate about. I look up at her and I say, that's an inspiring thing. I want to be like my mother in that sense. I want to find new things, and I already have a lot of them. I know what they'll be. I know what my hobbies are, but today I put work ahead of my hobbies. In the future, I look forward to make my hobbies a priority and my work a secondary. I hope I'll have learned something in this. I'll have learned enough in the work environment that I'll be able to have that experience I talked about earlier, help balance other young founders' ambitions, the bad ambitions, the ambitions that make you not ask the right questions, that make you blinded by what you think is possible, but it ultimately will run you over. So I look to just transition from a period where I'm spending the majority of my time doing what I love today and working in a wonderful organization. But in the future, it becomes a secondary, but it's not retirement. Who wants our brain to go away? A brain is what makes us amazing people. And they've proven the more you use your brain, the longer you live, as long as you take care of your body. But, there's so many things that I want to conquer out there. There's so many things that I think are just so fascinating, whether that be learning languages, whether that be, being a better husband. I just feel like retiring, fuck that. Retirement is not part of my vocab.
As a long-time Chegg employee, truly, authentically, I've seen some companies, right, on the journey in my life. And I think Chegg's leadership is amazing and embodied in you. And thank you, truly thank you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
all the time we have.
Thank you.